Hello and welcome, everyone. Very excited to have you here. We're going to have a fabulous quick 30 minutes together. We'll talk about meeting your company's coaching objectives. As we go through, please do use the chat box to enter your questions. You can have them visible to everyone, or you can choose to have them just visible to me. Either is fine. I'm going to monitor it all the way through this conversation. Really is an opportunity for you to get information that you want. To let all of you know, yes, I am recording this. I will put this recording on our YouTube channel, and I will send all of you a link to it so that you can come back to it and revisit. All right, moving into the agenda. Where are we going with this conversation? We'll talk about company coaching programs, establishing a company coaching program. We'll talk about coach training in the organization, managing a coaching program services. We'll have time at the end for Q&A. So in terms of what we'll discuss about company coaching programs, we'll talk about the reasons for a program, the elements of a coaching program, and maximizing results. Starting with your reasons for coaching programs. And by the way, when you're going to have a program in an organization, buy-in starting from the top is absolutely essential. And for many people, it means making the case for that. So let's talk about the reasons. First off, the ROI research. If you're in the coaching world, you're familiar with it. If you're outside the coaching world, you'll be astonished by the numbers. The bottom line is that the average ROI for coaching is 600%. I mean, that's a huge number, and it's a great tool in terms of making the case. If you're going to do some research and put some of those numbers together, first off, we're happy to help you in that process, support that. Second off, I can give you a couple of studies to look for specifically. Look for metrics, look for Manchester Inc. So those are a couple of studies. There's also a really good one that was done at Amoco, which is now part of British Petroleum, that's worth looking at. Those are just a few. There's many, many more. And I'm, again, happy to share with you on that if you want to know specifics because you're making the case. Another reason organizations are instituting coaching programs is because they're changing the culture in the organization. They want it to be positive. They want it to be proactive. They want people on their teams engaged and empowered. And so it supports that culture. It helps them meet company objectives specifically, whatever it is they want to accomplish. Just as coaching in and of itself has that high ROI, when you have that culture in an organization, you're also supporting achieving the results the organization wants. Sometimes the objectives are around productivity, around engagement. Talent retention is a big one right now. Of course, leadership development coaching is a big part of leadership development and transition and change management. So supporting all of that, transformation in an organization when they want to go that far. The elements of the program that are included, you want to have a plan, an overarching, this is how this is going to work. A communication plan as part of that, which is how we're rolling out information, how we're communicating it, the whole process in terms of what it works. So plans specifically for those processes. You want to have plans for measuring the results of the coaching program. So let's dig in. If you're seeking to maximize results, get the objectives established at the beginning. What is it you want out of this? What are you wanting to accomplish? Align coaching program objectives with organizational objectives because they support each other. There's a synergy there. Determine how you're going to measure those results. Track the outcomes that happen, review the results, and then, of course, adjust and repeat as you go. So, specifically, making the case, planning, and some best practices. Then we'll move into managing the coaching sessions and resources to have available. So when you're establishing a coaching program, making the case involves the ROI research. So you heard me mention a few studies. Having that information is great. It is also really smart as an organization to look at other organizations that are similar and what they're doing with coaching, because chances are you have competitors that are using coaching programs and they're getting results. It's impacting their bottom line. So check out specific to your industry. Look at who's doing it and what's happening with it. And between the ROI research and looking at other company programs, you're going to be able to demonstrate how the coaching is getting the results that are desired. The planning involved for a coaching program, you're going to determine how it's managed. Sometimes that's in the HR department. Sometimes there's an organizational development department. It does vary. You want to be specific in terms of who's involved in the program, and then having your plan and your resources. So to me, the big one on how it's managed, which department it's housed in, and who is heading that effort up. Keep in mind that sometimes what happens is if you have one individual that's pushing for this and then something happens where they're no longer there, that can derail a program. So involving multiple people is smart. Figuring out who and how they're going to coordinate that is extremely important. When you think about who is involved, in addition to having your buy-in from the top and spreading it throughout, think also who all is involved in managing the program, measuring results, and think about who the coaches are and who the clients are. In terms of an organization plan, we have a great white paper available to you. If you want it, let me know. We'll send it to you on starting and running an internal coaching program. Give you a lot of really good, solid information for that program plan. And then we actually work with people on setting up the full manual. So best practices in creating a coaching program inside of an organization. You want internal coaches for entry to mid-level people on the team. The reason that's the best practice is, frankly, it's more cost effective, and realistically, the coaches are probably above that level, which means it's okay for them to be coaching people in the entry to mid-level ranks. You want external coaches for your higher level people. It's going to come down to a couple of things here. Yes, it's more expensive to have the external coaches, and it's more effective because with your higher levels of management, your higher levels of executives, number one, higher level of expertise in the coaching is going to be important. And number two, the whole piece around confidentiality and them having the freedom to really maximize the coaching relationship. You do want to have the coachee invested in having a coach. So for example, in some organizations, they'll tell somebody, okay, you got a problem, you're going to go get coached. And that can derail the coaching before it even starts. You want the coaching program to be, hey, if you get a coach, yeah, that's a big win. That's a huge bonus. And part of how you do that is, for example, have a process. Perhaps you have an application that the person that's going to be coached fills out, and they have to get a manager or supervisor to sign off on it. Or if it's being initiated on the company side, the manager or supervisor fills out the application and the person who's going to be coached signs off on it. So designing the applications accordingly is really smart. As a matter of fact, working with an organization right now where we're coordinating that. So it's an important piece. If you have internal coaches working with your entry to mid-level management, getting external training for them is essential. Here's what happens, and there's studies on this. They look at it and companies say, okay, well, no, we can train people on coaching. And what they end up doing is creating programs that teach really good communication skills or mentoring skills, and they miss the mark in terms of what coaching really is and how it works. You want a program that's been approved by the International Coach Federation to get the kind of results you see in the research. External training for internal coaches. Coaching sessions themselves, how are you going to manage those? So first off, think about when and where they're going to happen. So there's a couple of considerations to this. When you think about an organization, a lot of times people think, oh, okay, well, just go to the coach's office, that kind of thing. The caveat to it that I'll give you is that can create a power differential that can interfere with effective coaching. Meeting in a neutral space is smart, and you want it to be a private space. So that means a conference room where they can close the door and it's just the coach and the client. If your organization is global, spread out, obviously there are so many technologies you can use. I'll share something from a discussion I was in earlier today. And that is that coaches have moved away from using Skype, because when you sign up for a Skype account, you're giving them permission to access whatever you're doing, and you violate confidentiality. Another discussion we had was, okay, what if the company has a technology for those meetings? Well, my question is, who else has access to it? So when you think about when and where people are meeting, make sure it's a phone line that isn't monitored or recorded. Make sure it's a technology, if you're meeting online, that isn't accessible by others, so that you truly protect the confidentiality. There are tremendous benefits to meeting on the phone or online as compared to face-to-face. Many of you have had this conversation in your coach training, and it boils down to this. When the coachee is observing the coach, they're watching the coach's reaction to what they say, they're watching the coach take notes, it can interfere with their thinking. So having a conversation where the coachee isn't watching the coach frees them up to stay in their own head in terms of their thinking and processing. Get super clear on your roles. So the ICF Code of Ethics talks about defining roles as part of our responsibility as coaches. When you have internal coaches, this is absolutely essential, because sometimes the internal coach is also in HR, or also in talent development, or other capacities. And so you've got to define, okay, which role is at play when? And what does that mean? How are we managing that? So have those conversations. Talk about confidentiality. I mentioned a few things on technologies playing into confidentiality. Email can play into that. If you're using a company-owned email, then other people have access to that information. Another consideration in terms of confidentiality is if the coach is internal and they're taking notes on a company-owned device, that means those notes are accessible by others. So all of these pieces play into whether or not you're protecting confidentiality. Okay, resources that you want to have available for a coaching program. For the coaches, you want to have agreements that they can use with the people they're coaching. Forms may include initial applications to have a coach. Another form that's really great to have available is a report form where the coach and the coachee co-create the report, and the coachee turns it into their manager or whoever's managing the coaching program. For example, in the white paper, we have a table where it defines what the coachee is working on, what their plan is, notes on how it's going, etc. Well, here's the idea. Sometimes when you have a coaching program, a manager or supervisor will come to the coach and say, I want you to tell me what you're talking about in those coaching sessions. I'm taking that money out of my budget. I'm committing time of my team, and I want to know what's going on and whether or not it's working. Well, those of you who have done coach training, we all know that that's the sponsor, that's who's covering the expense of the coaching, and the client is the person being coached. And we know those conversations are confidential. So how do you balance that? When you co-create the report with the client, they choose what information goes in there, and they are the ones who control turning it in. So it gives them the option of choosing what information to disclose, when, and how. So multiple different types of forms like that can be helpful. A pre-session questionnaire, a post-session follow-up, sample questions to help the coach, any number of resources. Do keep in mind that part of it is going to be resources for the coach in their own development as a coach. You want to support them with continuing education, support them with access to different materials, with opportunities to learn from what they're doing in those coaching conversations. And if they're working with individuals who are working with the coach for the purpose of change, whether it's behavior, skills, etc., what is their access to development? So if they commit to that change, do they have the opportunity to get the information, do the learning that's involved in creating that change? When you look at training for the coaches, we talked about going external. I mentioned make sure it's ICF approved. And then let's talk also about the minimum versus the ideal. So going external, you're going to get coaching subject matter expertise. You're going to ensure you have a coaching methodology, and you will expand the organizational knowledge base. As an example for you, we do have organizations that we go in and do initial training, and then we train one of their people, and they license the program so that they can bring then the external training in-house and make it cost effective. Best practice is ICF approved training. There are a lot of coach training programs out there. The gold standard is the International Coach Federation. Add value when a training program provides CEUs to people who complete the class, and support the efforts with the time and the resources to make it work. ICF approved means you're hitting the gold standard. It's somebody else's vetting the training in terms of the ethics and the competencies, and you're sort of an effective methodology. The minimum versus the ideal of training. One thing we've done is go in and do a 2-day training, coaching skills for leaders, for example. It creates awareness of what coaching is, how it works, and it starts building the basic skills. A starting point is the Certified Professional Coach Program. It's a 30-hour class, and it builds the basics. Now, in terms of your ideal, you really want to view having a coach qualified for membership in the ICF and being a member of the ICF as the gold standard. What's the reason for that? That's what's happening in the coaching world. Bottom line, we're self-regulating through the ICF, and that membership really is a standard in terms of identifying oneself as a coach. In addition to that, members of the ICF are now accountable to the Code of Ethics, and there's a lot of power to that. Can you go beyond that? Yes, of course. We have a lot of organizations that say, okay, let's get our internal people to that level, and then for the external coaches coming in from outside, we'll look at asking for credentialed coaches. So there's even a higher level. When you look at managing a coach training program, think about your program plan and processes, the communication plan. Recruiting coaches is a big one. How you're accepting clients, how you're managing those coaching relationships, dealing with conflicts that come up, confidentiality, and measuring results. So let's dive into this. And by the way, I realize I'm going super fast. I am watching comments and questions in that chat. So what I'm wanting to do is make sure we cover the information for you in the time that we have, and I'm going to hang around and answer additional questions. So thanks for that. All right, program plan and processes, a program manual. In that white paper I mentioned, I'm, again, happy to send it to whoever wants. It's readily available to you. We talk about what's included in the program manual. Part of that is also going to be addressing the policies and procedures for the program, the process for selecting coaches and coachees. Now, keep in mind, when you're selecting coaches that are internal and going to be coaching other people internally, it's important to be aware of what their other duties and responsibilities are, what their role is, how they're perceived in the organization, the amount of time they have available to commit to this, and their interest in investing the time both in training and in being a coach. As far as the coachees, what's their reason for wanting a coach, making the business case for it, and then them having skin in the game through an application process. As far as managing the coaching relationships, a best practice is to have the coachee involved in choosing their coach. So specifically giving them access to bios of available coaches, giving them the opportunity to interview those available coaches and select who they want to work with, because rapport between the coach and the client is the number one indicator of success. You want them involved in who their coach is, because that's going to really move you forward in terms of developing that rapport. Then have a process in terms of how many sessions. So how are you deciding? In the profession itself, a best practice is a minimum commitment to 6. Organizations may do more or less. Keep in mind, when you have fewer than 6 sessions, it's very tough to truly affect meaningful change. You can address some burning fires. It's going to be a more limited process. When you have 6 or more sessions, there's time to really dig in to who that person is, what's going on for them, because that in turn influences their strategies and action plans. Manage how many sessions, manage where they're meeting, how they're handling notes and confidentiality. All of that is going to be in place. Your process for evaluating results, document that, set it up ahead of time. So, for example, a lot of organizations will look at what metrics are available. Okay, we track productivity, we track engagement, we track turnover. What are the different things that are already being tracked? That's a great place to start in terms of a baseline before, and then what's the impact of the coaching in those areas, and looking at the results after the coaching. Above and beyond that, do have evaluations that are filled out after coaching relationships are complete. Look also at the possibility of using assessments and comparing the results before and after a coaching engagement. So there's lots of options. Be intentional in terms of how you're evaluating that and measuring. Your communication plan. You want to, with that top level commitment, you want from the top the promotion of what this is as an opportunity and the commitment to creating the coaching culture in the organization. And then you're figuring out, how do we communicate what the opportunities are? Communicate what the processes and policies are. Think about it. When the coach, the client, and whichever manager or supervisor is identified as their sponsor know the processes and the policies, it helps everything run far more smoothly. And you're tracking results. Well, communicate the impact of those results. I think about that study that was done at Amoco, part of British Petroleum, and they looked at coaching relationships over a 10-year period of time. And the people that had coaches had 50% higher salary increases. Okay, if I'm in an organization and I learn that and coaching is available to me, oh my gosh, of course I'm interested. So recognizing that impact both feeds the buy-in and feeds the interest level of people in getting involved. When you're recruiting coaches, the internal coaches, you want people that are great with others, that have really great communication skills, and have the time and the interest. So some organizations ask for volunteers. Some target people and ask them to volunteer. Excuse me. With external coaches, oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. Think about your options. So, for example, some organizations work with multiple individual coaches. Some organizations want to work with one firm that provides multiple coaches. What are the standards you're going to ask for? So, if you're hiring a coach, whether through a firm or individually, you want to know, hey, am I going to require ICF membership? Am I looking for credentialed people? What are the standards in terms of the training of that coach and their experience? Accepting clients, okay? Sometimes people ask, when they hear about that coaching program, they inquire about it. Sometimes they're referred from their supervisor. So what is the process going to be in terms of who is accepted and what's the criteria for determining that acceptance? It goes back to what's happening in terms of the company investing both money and time in that coaching being available. And so you really want to make the business case for it. Okay, so a question that came in, how do you determine other organizations that may be offering a coaching program internally? Love that question. Now, a couple of things I'll share with you. A lot of those organizations are very public about it because they use it in their recruiting efforts. And so that's very important to them. Sometimes they're public about it because basically they're promoting the success they're experiencing as a result of it. So those are simple ways. Sometimes you find out based on who's in your network for those things. So there are a number of different ways to find them. Depending on your role in the organization, you probably have colleagues in similar roles with other organizations, and you can ask them and talk to them. So those are a few ideas in terms of finding out. Hope that's helpful in terms of getting started. Now, coaching relationships themselves. And by the way, I've got another question. I want to come back to that in a minute. So I do see it. So just to let you know. All right. For the coaching relationship, it is very important that the coach is outside the coach's chain of command. To give you a specific example, at the International Coach Federation, when you're submitting your log of coaching experience hours in the pursuit of a credential, they don't count it if that person is somebody you supervise, for example, because that's not really coaching. That's using coaching skills as a manager or a supervisor, and the inherent conflict of interest keeps it from being true coaching. So making sure the coach is outside the coach's chain of command. Ensuring that you clarify, okay, this is coaching. So while this person works in HR or wherever else they work, yeah, that's different. And here's how it's different. And get very specific with that. Make sure you're protecting the confidentiality of that relationship. Here's a tough example. For people in HR, they're very used to documenting everything, and that's all owned by the company. When it's coaching, that doesn't happen. And so you've got to clarify that and clarify how you're managing it. A written agreement can help that. Sometimes it's a very strong verbal agreement. I recommend promoting exactly what it is. And then, of course, you're coordinating scheduling. Ideally, that happens between the coach and the coachee. If you have conflicts come up, conflict coaching is a fabulous tool. Those of you who have done your certified professional coach, you learn the stop conflict model in that class. We have a recording on YouTube that walks you through that process for doing that. Do keep in mind your code of ethics and your confidentiality when you're addressing whatever conflict this is. Another question came in, have I seen organizations try this out, test it out with a few people and see the value before implementing at a bigger level? Absolutely. Frequently happens that way, where they run a pilot and then grow it from there. And I've been involved in organizations doing that. So realizing we're hitting that time mark, let me go and super quick, and then I'll hang around with whoever's here and answer additional questions. So first off, measuring results can use internal metrics. You can use assessments, pre and post assessments are an option. And then of course, qualitative feedback through the surveys. Services that are available in terms of supporting programs include, we help people with manuals, we help people with managing the program, setting it up, starting it, evaluating it, measuring results. We provide coach training with organizations, and we provide external coaches. Those of you here that are graduates of the Center for Coaching Certification, we do set up agreements, contracts with organizations, and when they're looking for coaches, we're placing graduates in those opportunities. Coaching program support is absolutely across the board. In addition to the program itself, we can provide coaching for the program administration and for the individual coaches. And we do have off-the-shelf resources such as a program manual. The white paper is available to absolutely anyone. There's no cost to that. The program manual is something that we actually sell for that. And then we can provide an assessment dashboard and I have graduates that receive them automatically. I have organizations that ask for them and we provide them. So that's an option for you. The coach training that we offer is tailored to the company objectives. We work with the company budget, and we can do the full ICF approved program, or we can do a CEU program. It can be offered online, face-to-face, or in a blended format in either English or Spanish. In terms of the individual or of the actual coaching, we work with individuals, groups, and teams. We've got coaches available at all levels, entry level to CEO. We can provide one coach or we can provide many coaches. And we definitely are all about the quality control, drawing from our graduates. It's an opportunity for an organization to have both flexibility and support in providing that. Additional resources include the International Coach Federation, the Center for Coaching Certification, and the Center for Coaching Solutions. We do publish a blog twice a week. We've got a book once a year that gets published with chapters written by graduates, lots of great content, and then of course these free webinars. Now the question that came in on this webinar in terms of CEUs, where you're tracking continuing ed for renewal of a program with us, you're on the honor system. Because these programs are free, we do not track your attendance nor issue certificates. So it's really you tracking it yourself. If you want to submit it to someone else, that's your responsibility. You can do that. Typically, they want to know the agenda, what was covered, the time involved, etc., and you can ask them if they'll approve it. Those of you who have additional questions, we're available via a phone call or an online meeting, and also via email. We outsource the coaching program help, the training help, and the coaching. Those of you that took the time, okay, another question on the white paper. Send me an email telling me you want it. I'll reply to your email with it attached. In terms of how to get that really fast, I'm going to email you with a link to the recording from today on YouTube. You can reply to that email. You can ask for the white paper, or you can ask for the free 30 minutes, or both if you want that. We're here to support you with your coaching program. For everyone, whether you're doing a coaching program or you're an individual coach offering services to those organizations, it's up to you. What is your action plan? We do recommend you go back and revisit your coach training on a regular basis. Be intentional with your application of the skills. If you've done the initial training, come back and complete your training. And of course, on an individual basis, having a coach is smart. I know a lot of people in our programs do exchanges with each other, and that's awesome. Let's see, in terms of maintaining your credential, 12 hours every 2 years. If you've got the CMC, which is what you're asking, when you renew, you're really renewing the CMC at this point, because That's the level above the CPC. And yes, when you renew your CMC, it does renew your access to the CPC login page as well. So we have used our time. Obviously, I want to thank every single one of you for being here. Here's my contact information. I will get an email out to you. And I am happy to hang around as long as any of you are here. And answer additional questions. So you can do that one of two ways. If you want to unmute yourself and come on live, you have that option. And then alternatively, if you want to type it into the question panel addressed either to me privately or to everyone, I'm happy to take questions that way as well. It looks like we've covered what I'm seeing really now is the thanks, some of them to everyone, some of them to me. So that's awesome. I'm glad this was helpful to all of you. I'm thinking we're complete at this point, so I will go ahead and close it out. And once I get it up on YouTube, I'll send you the link to the recording. So thank you, everyone.